get some reaction to that ANC briefing. The party discussed the independence of the Reserve Bank as well as the Zondo Commission, as you have just heard. Political analyst TK Pooe joins us now to discuss these issues further. Let's start with the ANC's attitude towards the Commission. I mean, people like Nomvula Mokonyane have been implicated, but interestingly, the ANC says it's going to wait until it hears their side of the story before it can take any action. But what's interesting about that is that on the back of the VBS scandal in Limpopo, for example, it took a completely different attitude, suspended some of the senior politicians and ANC leaders who were involved.
No, I think it's an approach which says the higher up you are, whether you've been implicated or not, the more it seems as though they're more lenient with you and that it's very hard to dispose of you. And I think that was a question a lot of people asked after the VBS issue, was to say, is this how the ANC going forward is going to work? But then I guess this gives us an indication that, listen, if you really have got political clout, and a lot of the people that have been mentioned, especially at national level, have got clout, therefore maybe it seems as though the rules work differently for them.
But I mean, what's interesting is that, I mean, I know that we talk a lot about people who have clout, but the fact of the matter is, when you look at people like Nomvula Mokonyane, it's not so much clout, because they were, you know, really elevated, if that is the word, by those who were in power before. In particular, here we're talking about former President Jacob Zuma. And if one goes by the testimony, you know, of Angelo Agrizzi, I mean, they even paid for things that actually weren't done by Nomvula Mokonyane, you know, but I mean, they still spend a lot of money. So the question here really goes then back to President Cyril Ramaphosa as to why he would continue to keep in his cabinet, where he has prerogative, people like her, in spite of the revelations that we've seen, which, by the way, she has not disputed, because even in the letter that she sent to the Commission yesterday, she doesn't speak at all to the issues that have been raised by Angelo Agrizzi, but talks about process.
If you actually, I think there's a commentary Mr. Grizo was giving when he said he got irritated that she wasn't delivering. But again, that's a whole perception of, I think, President Cyril Ramaphosa. The fact is, he's not fully in charge of the ANC. Now, whether you believe or we believe Ms. Mokonyane has got power or not, actually lies in the fact that she's still there. I think we've had close what you can tell, 2 turnovers within Parliament, and she's still around, which says she does have some backing. She might not be in favor with the current president, but maybe by virtue of having backing of the previous president and his former associates or his cabal, it still allows her to have some leniency. But I'd like to maybe ask the question which we need to ask is, we were told that when the incoming president was coming in, that we're going to see almost like a clean way the ANC was going to operate. And it didn't have to rely on the fact whether someone is fully guilty or not, because I think we have to also understand commissions of inquiry are not courts. You still need to go to court, and you might find that, listen, you get exonerated by a court, but there was an issue of saying perceived corruption, and I think that's where many South Africans are saying, but wait, isn't this what was happening in the past, where the former president was accused of many things and the ANC would brush it aside? And what people actually are hoping to say, is this not something new? The fact that there is even a perception of corruption, meaning, look, you should be able to, that thing within you which is called a conscience, which says, this is not right. You know, even if I'm innocent, let me step back, let me go clear my name forward. And I think it seems as though it's business as usual. And I think that really is what I think would upset a lot of South Africans to say, listen, there's nothing really new which is happening under this ANC sun.
So the divisions pretty much continuing, and evidence of that, I guess, was also came to the fore when the ANC was launching its manifesto during its January 8th celebrations in Durban, where after that, in fact, during his speech, President Cyril Ramaphosa, feeling the need to actually talk also about both the ownership and talk about the South African Reserve Bank, whereafter you saw again along factional lines, you had the Secretary General of the ANC saying something, then you had the person leading the subcommittee on economic transformation feeling the need to take on the Secretary General of the ANC. And here's what Ace Magashule had to say today about that particular issue.
Otla reaffirmed the independence of South African Reserve Bank as set out in the Constitution as a national asset that is critical to meeting our national objectives, including public ownership of the bank. The South African Reserve Bank must pursue flexible monetary policy regime and without sacrificing price stability must ensure that monetary policies take into account the other objectives such as employment creation and economic growth.
Do you think that, the factionalism that we're still seeing and clear pushback from the faction that was obviously defeated in Nasrec will help the ANC as it goes into election mode?
Elections... I think there's actually a recent study which has come out, I think it was by Brookings, which says when people actually go vote, you would think everybody's voting with a rational mind, that these stories are going to come up and people are going to say, oh my word, no. But people actually vote with emotions. So it'll be interesting to see what the narrative people spin. The great narrative right now people are spinning is that, President Cyril Ramaphosa, he's under so much duress from this other faction. Let's give him a chance, forgetting that, look, it's one party, meaning you don't have a choice of saying, I like this faction, I like this faction. So it'll be interesting to see what narrative they can spin closer to it. But I think from the discussions, it really just points to the fact that this is a party which it's almost as though it's a self-cannibalization. By that I mean, when it says, look, we want the Reserve Bank to look at issues such as employment, which no one will have an argument with. But the other question which has to ask about, listen, you guys have been in government for the last 25 years. Why were you guys not looking at the issue of unemployment? And many of the issues which they want to pass on to the Reserve Bank, if you read them line item by line item, it's things with the ANC in government has actually had power over. So it's almost as I was saying, listen, we failed for the last 25 years. Let's go to the one sparkling, shining example which people perceive to be working, which is the Reserve Bank. Now, I personally have always had an issue with why they privatized in the beginning, but many economists will give you the reasons for it. But the one thing which I think we have a problem is when we see something is working, rather than dealing with our own issues internally as government, what they tend to do is, look, let's just pass on the buck and let's go take something over, with the understanding that maybe it's going to work. And I think this has been the problem for the ANC, that they never hardly deal with the actual problems with the state faces.
And that's what Lumkile Mondi, an economist, said the last time he was here, that the ANC had ample time, but this was not a priority for them. And right when they have to focus on real issues affecting South Africans, they are raising what are non-issues, or certainly not things that are so urgent. Thanks very much for coming through this evening. Please